This is your instructional video for putting together the paper house which is going to house your projections. First thing, you're going to need a craft knife, a pencil, a ruler, a metal ruler, a CD case, and some tape, preferably masking tape. And then you're going to need to print out all of the different pages. So that's the back of it. And you've got a side here with the chimney on. This is the side without the chimney. Then you've got the roof, and this is the most complicated one. And this is the front of the building, and that's where we're going to start. So, first thing we're going to do to start off with, we're going to score all of the dotted lines. So any line which is drawn on any of these pages, which is dotted, needs to be scored. I'm going to use a craft knife. I'm going to use the back end of the craft knife to score all my lines on it. So holding the ruler firmly, I'm going to turn the knife upside down and just score lightly down each one of these dotted lines. And when you've got to the end of doing that, I'm just going to show you there's a couple of bits where maybe it won't print to the edges of your paper. And that happens on a lot of the sheets. In this one, it's just a case of extending these two lines out to the edges. You could probably actually guess where they are for when you're cutting it later, but just as a precaution before we go and do any cuts, I'm just extending these lines out to the edges there. And I'm going to take my craft knife and we're going to cut all of the continuous lines. So again, holding the ruler down, and make sure you put a lot of pressure on the ruler and not a lot of pressure on the knife. You're going to want a nice sharp knife for this. It's better to do a light cut a couple of times. I started cutting on this and I realised that the end of my knife was a little bit blunt. So when I got this little bit out here, I just broke off one of the ends here to make sure I have a nice sharp knife. And then you shouldn't have to put much pressure down at all to cut through this paper. So going through it again, very carefully cutting all of the continuous lines. And when you're done with that, you should have something that looks a bit like this. And now we're going to cut out all of the other lines. Now, you could use your craft knife for doing this, but I went and found myself a pair of scissors. And so I'm going to cut out the rest of it with a pair of scissors. Be really careful down this bottom end. The bit that I'm cutting out at the moment is going to be the steps, and there's lots of squares in it. It's very easy to mistake what needs cutting out and what doesn't. And then you're going to want to cut these little tabs, which are on each of the windows. So there's little short continuous lines on the edges of a couple of the dotted lines. So going through and making sure that those are all cut. And when you've done that, you should have your first one all ready to fold and make. And we're just going to put that to one side and we're going to have a go at the next one. So this one here is the side, which has got the chimney on it as well. And the first thing we're going to do, as we did in the last one, we're actually going to extend a couple of the lines. Now the lines on the edges of this one, again, my printer just doesn't print to the edge of the paper. So these couple of tabs at the side of it want to be 1 centimetre thick. So if you measure the lines and just stick an extra 1 centimetre on there, just as I've done there, you should be able to draw in the lines which maybe your printer hasn't printed. If your printer's better than mine, you might be all right. You might not need to do this. And then once we've done that, we are going to go through and we are going to score all of the dotted lines. Again, using the back end of the knife and doing that lightly. Not as many on this one. If you want to fold the piece of paper a little bit to check that your scores are working, that's maybe not a bad idea. And then the majority of this one you can cut out with a pair of scissors. So I'm just going to do that. Again, cutting all of the continuous lines. There's one line which is in the middle of it on this one, which you're going to have to cut with your craft knife. So just this bit here, again, lots of pressure on the ruler and a little pressure on the knife. Not enough pressure on the ruler there. There you go. And that is that one done. Now, I'm going to put that to one side. We are in a bit of a mess at the moment, so I'm just going to clear my workstation. Need to keep clearing your workstation. Make sure that you're not leaving loads of paper on that maybe you're going to slip on when you are cutting things. And now we're going to do an easy one, which is the roof. Again, a couple of the end lines on this didn't print. Now, the end line should be 14 centimeters away from the central line there. So you could measure 14 centimeters away from this central line if you wanted to do and draw that line on. But in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to first cut out this little box here, and then I'm going to score it down the middle line. And once I've scored it down the middle line, I'm just going to fold it in half and use the paper folded in half and just cut down the line that has printed, because this roof is symmetrical. So we're just going to cut down that line there. Make sure your corners are nicely aligned. So I was about to cut this and I noticed that the corner wasn't aligned, so I've gone through and I've realigned the corners and just make sure that my crease is perfectly in the middle. And then if you grab your scissors and just cut down that line, your roof should be done, just like that. Okay, and now we've got the other side to do, very similar to the last one. Again, going down all of the dotted lines, scoring them with a ruler and your back of your knife, and then we're going to take the pair of scissors and we're going to cut it out. And again, that's that one done. Okay, no internal lines on that one, so you don't need to use your craft knife for cutting any of the bits of that, though you can use it instead of a pair of scissors if you want to do that. This is the back wall, and it's fairly simple. Just again, scoring down all of those dotted lines. There's a few lines in the middle that you have to cut with your craft knife and then cutting out with the scissors. Put it to one side and go make yourself a cup of tea. Okay, so this is the front wall of your house. It's the most fiddly part. It's made up of three parts really. There's the kind of middle wall, which is going to be your actual front, and then there's the steps at the bottom there, and on the top there's the wall that's going to fold behind. And the first thing we're going to do is fold out the windows. So if you take each of these little bits which are in the middle of your windows and just fold them down all of the creases, you might find it easier if you actually turn the paper the opposite way to the way that I've got it there, so you can actually see the creases as you fold them. If you find that your paper isn't folding easily down the creases, you might want to get your blade back out again and actually just do a better job of scoring them. Okay. You also might find, like I did here, that when you get up to the corner that you haven't quite cut your lines far enough, and if you do find that they're not quite cut far enough and it's stopping it from folding, just get a pair of scissors out and cut into the corners like that. So you should be able to fold it down all of these creases, and then you're going to have little tabs as well which fold inwards, which I'm just doing now. So it should look, when it's all folded, it should have these tabs in, and basically what you're going to do is take the bit that you've just folded the tabs onto there and push it through the little hole at the side, and I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so this little tab goes through that gap, and then if you turn your sheet over, you should be able to pull out the little bits that you've just folded in, and that's going to hold that piece of paper through into the back there. And what that's done is made you a little side to your window, and that's going to make your window frame, or the start of your window frame. And you've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more of those to do. So going through and folding them again, take your time with it. If there's little bits that aren't working, go through and cut any extra bits that you need to cut, or redo any of your creases. Spend a bit of time on it. Be careful with it. Like, it's very easy to rip bits on it, so make sure you treat it with gentle hands. And once you've done it, you should have something like that. We're now going to have a go at the steps. So the steps fold upwards and make a little 2-step staircase going into the front door there. I've just forgotten to do one of my cuts there. Make sure that's in there. So now what we're going to do is actually fold up the stairs by just folding along all of those creases first. So any of your dotted lines which are creased, just go through and make some folds on those. And once you've got all of your bits, all your creases working, we're going to start actually folding the steps into the shape that they need to be. So we've got 2 little sides to the steps, which are kind of L-shaped, and those bits are going to fold up, and then you're going to fold the front in. Now, it's quite complicated, this bit, and it is quite fiddly. Just take your time with it. Keep watching this bit of the video back. Maybe I will do a little bit of a zoom in so you can see a little bit better what it is that you need to do. But basically, you're folding all of these tabs over, and you're going to start with the folds nearest to the bottom of the door there. And you're going to fold it up and start making the front of that first step there. And you should see the little tabs then fold inside, and the tabs from the side bits fold over the top of it. And once you've done that, you should have the front of your first step there. Now, it should all hold together just using the folds here, but if you want to get yourself a little bit of tape just to hold it in place so it doesn't fall apart when you start doing the other parts of the steps, you could just get yourself a bit of tape. I'd suggest, again, masking tape for doing this. Masking tape's really good because you can, if you make a bit of a mistake with where you put the tape, you can take it off without ripping the paper. If you are using sellotape, I'd suggest just putting the sellotape on your fingers a little bit and just getting some of the stickiness off on your fingers or maybe on your trousers. And once you've done that, that's going to be the front of your step. And then the next little rectangle that you've got on those is going to become the top of your first step there. And again, you're going to fold down the little tabs, and hopefully that'll all just slot it into the side of it there. It takes a bit of playing with this. Just be gentle with it. If you see, once you've done that, you should have a little box at the bottom of it, like I've got there. That is the first bit of your step, and then you're going to kind of repeat this procedure for the other bits. So this next step, which is the front of your second step, has got some slightly larger tabs on it, and those are going to fold inside your sides of your steps, because those tabs are actually going to go through little slots at the bottom of the door, and that's going to hold the whole thing together. So pushing those through like that, and again folding over the little tabs on the sides of the steps and holding it in place. And again, if you want to put a little bit of tape on that, you can do to hold it, though it should just hold by the tabs being in place. And then the next rectangle that you've got is going to be the top of your second step. Again, fold the tabs in, and those tabs should go inside the step. And then fold the step over, so fold the top of the step over. So tabs in like that. And like that. And fold the top over. And we should hopefully have something which looks like a staircase, but is not actually stepping up to the steps at the moment, because we're going to actually fold the whole staircase now. And that staircase is going to actually join to the bottom of your door. So these little tabs on the side of it are going to go through the little gaps, and then there's a little tab on the top of the top step there, which is going to go through your door. I'll show you how that works. Okay, so all of those tabs should neatly go through those holes, and again the friction of that should actually hold the whole thing together, and you should have your little staircase. But if you want to actually stick a little bit of tape on this to hold it in place, so when you're doing other things with it, it doesn't come apart, if you just fold those tabs over here, and again a little bit of masking tape, stick it over those tabs, you should be all right. Okay, so that is the front of this house bit done. Now, what we're actually going to do now is create just the little window boxes, which are going to go at the bottoms of the windows and the little tops of the frames. And we're going to do that by folding this top part of it over. And when we fold this over, you're going to find that you've actually got on there little bits which you're going to pull through the windows and through the doors to create your window boxes and your door on it. So once that's neatly folded, and make sure you've got it right across that line there, we're going to actually pull through all of these bits to create your window boxes and your doors. So we've got these two bits for the windows, that's the door, and those are the other two window bits. And you're basically going to pull through these holes. Now, I realized when I started pulling my door through this hole here that the corner of it there wasn't cut properly. And so I'm actually going to have to go back. I've missed a little bit of a line here. And so I'm just going to pull the door back through again, and I'm going to get a pair of scissors, and I'm just going to cut down the little line on the edge here, which is going to make it so that that'll come through the door properly. So just take a pair of scissors and snip it there. And then you should be able to pull that door through the door to be able to make your sticky out 3D door at the front of it. And then we're going to do the same with the windows here, so pull the windows through. Okay, and once you've actually pulled those through, you should be able to see that you've got your little slits here at the bottoms and the tops, and those are going to be where your windows go through, but at the moment they're only cut through one piece of paper. So we're going to get our rule out again, and we're going to use that rule to actually just cut through the other piece of paper. So if you just take your knife and your rule and actually go over the slit that you made originally, and then you should find that when you push your tabs through later, you'll be able to get them through both pieces of paper because they'll be nicely lined up. So what we're going to do now is fold up the tops and the bottoms of the windows, and it's very similar to the way that you did it on the sides of the building. You might want to, when you're going through and folding them up, you might want to just flatten the sides as I've done there. So as long as you flatten them along the creases, that might make it a little bit easier for you to be able to fold the tops and the bottoms along the creases there. And then you're doing exactly the same as you did on the sides of the windows. You're just folding down the creases and then pulling the tabs over. And once you've got the tabs over like that, you should be able to tuck them through the gap. Make sure it goes through both pieces of paper. And again, you should be able to pick up those tabs on the back of it and open it out, and that should lock in the bottom of your windowsill there. So that's in there, and if you want to stand this up, sometimes you end up with it folded slightly funny and it won't actually pop out. If you just stick a pair of scissors or something down the inside of it there, you should be able to pop out that part of your window. So that's your window box on that one. So you've got to do the same for the other window box and the tops of the windows. Just going to go through and do that now. And once you've got that, the next bit is just to do the door. So you're going to pull the door through, and then again, you're going to fold it down the creases as we've done with all of the other bits. Now, there's a little bit of a fiddly bit here, and it took me ages to get this right. Again, a little bit of patience. I know it's the last thing you've done on this. This is the most fiddly section of the whole thing, this front bit. It's got all of the detailing for the whole building. Once you get to this part on the door, getting this little tab on the edge of the door to actually go through the gap in the side of the door is a bit of a pain. It took me ages to do it, as you'll see here. In fact, we'll fast forward through me trying to get that into there because it's not fun to watch. if you're getting to the point where you just want to throw the whole thing out the window, I'd suggest you could just get yourself a little piece of tape and just tape it down the back of the door if you want to do. But I eventually managed to get it through that gap. Once you got it through a little bit, you can pull it down and you should find that your door folds along all of those creases and you get a 3-dimensional door. So it's just making like a top edge and a side edge to your door so that when you look at it from certain angles, it looks like there's a thickness to your door. Okay, and then just neaten up your folds, make sure everything's looking good there. If you want to pull out any of the edges of your windows, you should end up with something like that. And at that point, yeah, another cup of tea, definitely. Okay, we're on the home stretch. So we're going to go through and we're going to fold up all the other bits of our house and then we're going to stick them all together. Now, there are far fewer fiddly bits on any of these now. This one is the side with the chimney on, and you should be able to just fold up all the sides and then you'll notice this one little tab. And if you push that tab through the little slit in it, you end up getting yourself a little chimney. And that's all you need to do to fold that one up. Not much to it at all. Make sure all the folds are going in the same direction. This fold at the bottom is just for a bit of strength. Just stops the house from bending. Make sure you fold up these little tabs as well, because those are going to lock all the house together. If you look at the other side of the house, exactly the same, but you just don't have the chimney on it. And again, making sure you fold down those little tabs for locking it. Then the other parts, you've got your back of the house, again folding down all of the creases, and I'm going to push this here through this tab now. I realised later in the video that I've pushed this through the wrong way, but we can deal with that later, and you can deal with that later if you've done that. Don't panic too much about pushing that through at the moment. But you've got that there ready to make the back of the house. And then you've just got your roof, which is already done. So now we're going to put all of these bits together, and we're going to start with one of the sides and the front of the house. And if you look at the back of this piece, there are a couple of slits on the sides of it. And so if you just pull that out there, you should be able to see the slits in it. And what we're going to do is take the tabs from the side of the house and slot it through there. And once you've got it through there, you should be able to open it out and it will hold the house together. Now, it is a bit fiddly, this. It can be a bit fiddly. Just take your time. Don't pressure anything. You shouldn't have to put any kind of force onto this, and be careful because there is potential you could rip something, and you wouldn't want to do that at this stage. Though if you do rip anything, don't panic too much because you could just tape it back together again with a little bit of masking tape. So that's through and those tabs are out, and that's those two bits locked together. So that's one side and the front of your house. And then you're just going to do exactly the same thing for the other side of your house. So going through and putting those tabs out, and that gives you the front and the two sides. Then you've just got to get the back. And if you bring the back in, again, it's exactly the same thing. You're just taking this little slit at the side of it here, and you're pushing the tab through it and opening it out. So getting those bits and push it through this. Now, I found this one particularly fiddly because I hadn't noticed that there was a piece of paper which was stopping it from going in. I'll show you that in a second. But don't panic. If it is being a little bit fiddly, just take your time, have a look, make sure there's nothing getting in the way that's stopping that from going through. So in my case, it was actually, it's finally through there. So it was this little piece of paper at the bottom there, which was actually stopping me from pushing it through. So I just needed to pull that out of the way. Once you've done that, you can bring it all around and you can push the last tabs from this other side through into the gap on the other side of the back there, which is exactly the same as the other side. It's a little bit more difficult now because you can't hold it flat, but you should find, hopefully, that it goes together like that. And then at this point, I did realise that the back of the house was sticking out, and that's because I hadn't done this tab up properly in the middle of it. So this one here, I've got it actually coming through the wrong bit, so I've actually just undone that now. And I'm going to make sure that this bottom piece of paper folds right underneath the back of the house, and then it tucks back in again. And again, this is a little bit fiddly. If you've got it the wrong way around, it doesn't matter massively. You could definitely fix it again with a little bit of tape if you wanted to do that. quite difficult to show you what I'm doing here, but basically I'm pushing it through that little tab, and then I'm just using a pair of scissors to open out the little wings on it to hold it in place. And once you've done that, make sure all your creases are nice, make sure everything's kind of sitting together as you feel like it should. It should all, nothing should be kind of forcing anything else out of the way, and you should be able to get something that looks fairly square like that. And at that point, we're just going to put on the roof, but this is going to need taping because the roof won't hold itself down. So this is the only piece that definitely needs tape. And what we're going to do is try and line up this back edge. So I'm doing the side without the chimney on first. We're trying to line up the edges, and then we're going to tape the little tab on the side of it. So this tab here, with that edge, is going to line up along that edge there now. Again, it can be a little bit fiddly with the rest of the house in play. You've got to make sure that corner ends up on the crease. And if you just spend a bit of time, make sure you align it nicely. And again, using masking tape to stick this together, because there's a good chance you're going to get this wrong. And it's fine if you do get it wrong. If you've done it with masking tape, just peel it back nice and slowly. Make sure you don't rip anything. If you're using sellotape again, just take a bit of the stickiness off with your fingers. Now you're going to attach the other tabs from the sides to your roof with other bits of tape. It's a little bit fiddly doing this. I tried to get this next tab down with a piece of tape from the inside, and I made a complete hash of it. It was quite difficult to lay the house down in a way to be able to get that piece of tape on. So you'll see that when I actually stand the house up now, it's a complete mess. It's all over the place. Okay, it's not lined up properly. So what I've had to do is slowly just peel that back again and again, like trying to hold the house in the shape it's supposed to be, and then stick that piece of tape down again. After doing that, I decided actually maybe a good idea would be just to tack the roof in place before I go and put on the pieces of tape inside. So on this other side here, if you just line those up with the edges of your chimney, if you just get yourself a little piece of masking tape and just put one on either side of the chimney here, and once you've done that, you can go inside and tape it properly, and then afterwards just take off those couple of little bits of tape. So one tab there, and we're going to just make sure that this corner's lined up with the corner of your chimney, and then again another tab on the other side. Once you've done that, you can turn your house upside down and you can tape the inside. Now you actually might find it easier if you just put the chimney off the edge of your table here, so you can lay the roof of it flat. And you'll probably find that it's easier to get yourself a decent edge for taping, because otherwise your house is going to be a little bit all over the place. And managed to get that piece of tape in, so the whole house is together now. If we stand it up, this is the basic shape of your house. You are very nearly finished, just a couple of little bits to sort, so you're just going to take off these couple of little bits of tape that you've used. And once you've taken off those couple of bits of tape, we're just going to make sure that the front of the house is nice and sturdy. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to run a piece of tape on the inside. I'm going to run it just straight along the line of the top of the house. So a little piece of tape all the way along kind of this top line here. In order to do that, I'm just going to take my house and just lay it off the side of the desk here. So if you look at the house, if you've got the front of the house and you want the front bit of the roof there, and you're going to lay that front bit of the roof flat on your desk, and that'll make it so you can nicely actually just tape that edge. Again, nice and gentle here. Make sure everything's well aligned before you put it down. If you push anything out of alignment, just slowly peel back the piece of tape. Make sure you've got a really nice straight edge there, and tape it back down again. So nice light fingers when you're pushing that down. And then we're just going to put the CD case inside. So take off the back bit. You've got these two little tabs at the side here. You want to break those off. I'm just using a little pair of pliers to break those off. You could probably break them off with your fingers, to be honest. And then once you've done that, we are just going to tape this to where we've just put that little piece of tape for strengthening. So it's going to go on something like that, though actually these little plastic bits on the edges there are not going to be good for your screen, so we're going to try and get those up against this edge here. So just put yourself a piece of tape on. So just make sure that's all neatly into there. You're not going to see this tape anyway, it's all hidden inside the house, but that's just going to take that edge to where you've just put that other piece of tape there, so it meets the house where the roof meets the front. You've got this little flap, and that's going to become your screen for your projections. And that's it. You've done. Give it a bit of a tidy. When you're done, it should look a little bit like this, and inside it you've got your little screen. So if you're going through the window, that's the screening. What you're going to do is just put your phone underneath this screen, and you should get something like this.